The evening started like any other. Mark Thompson sat at his workbench, fingers dancing across holographic displays, surrounded by half-completed engineering prototypes. Scattered tools and electronic components told the story of a mind perpetually in motion, always solving, always creating. Elena Rodriguez stood by the kitchen counter, preparing dinner. The soft sizzle of vegetables and the rhythmic chopping created a comforting domestic symphony. Her military intelligence background was evident in the precise, calculated movements of her hands, a stark contrast to the warm smile that occasionally brightened her face. Their apartment was a testament to their shared life, a blend of technical precision and personal warmth. Blueprints of advanced communication systems hung alongside photographs from their travels. A small robotic assistant wheeled quietly in the background, occasionally beeping softly to signal some minor task completion. Mark glanced up, catching Elena's eye. They shared a smile, the kind that spoke of shared secrets, mutual respect, and deep understanding. Little did they know that their ordinary evening was about to become extraordinary. The first sign something was wrong came as a subtle electrical disturbance. The lights flickered almost imperceptibly. The robotic assistant suddenly froze, its circuits momentarily disrupted by an unseen electromagnetic pulse. Mark's engineering instincts immediately sensed something was off. "Elena," he called out, his voice carrying a hint of caution. Before she could respond, a strange shimmering appeared in the middle of their living room. It was unlike anything Mark had ever seen. Not a hologram, not a projection, but a three-dimensional tear in the very fabric of space. The air grew thick, charged with an alien energy that made the hair on the back of Mark's neck stand up. In a fraction of a second, Elena was enveloped by the shimmering anomaly. Her body seemed to dissolve, pulled by an invisible force that defied every known law of physics. She didn't even have time to scream. Mark was already moving before his brain could fully process what had happened. Years of military training kicked in instantly. He lunged towards the spot where Elena had been, his hand reaching out into the rapidly closing spatial distortion. Nothing. Silence filled the apartment. The robotic assistant rebooted, its lights blinking innocently as if nothing had happened. But something very much had happened. A computerized communication interface flickered to life. An encrypted message appeared, its source untraceable. Specimen acquired. Research protocol. Phase 1 INITIAT. TU or DNAT. Designation Human 7392. Mark's hands clenched into fists. The message was clinical, cold, treating Elena like nothing more than a sample, a research subject. Something burned inside him. A mixture of rage, determination, and a promise that would shake the very foundations of an alien civilization. He knew three things with absolute certainty. First, whoever had taken Elena was technologically advanced beyond current human understanding. Second, they had no idea who they were dealing with. Third, he was going to make them regret ever choosing Elena as their research specimen. Within minutes, Mark's apartment transformed. Holographic screens erupted with data streams. Communication systems he had personally designed began scanning multiple frequency bands. Specialized tracking algorithms, some developed during his classified military engineering projects, started hunting for the slightest trace of the spatial anomaly. The robotic assistant rolled up beside him, as if sensing its master's intense focus. Mark's fingers flew across interfaces, initiating protocols that would have been considered science fiction just a few years ago. "We're going to find you," he muttered, his voice a low, dangerous promise. "And when we do, you'll wish you never heard of humans." The hunt had begun. The military base looked like any other from the outside. Bland concrete buildings, razor wire fences, and the occasional drone patrol. But inside one nondescript office, something extraordinary was brewing. Mark sat surrounded by holographic displays, each screen flickering with data streams, alien communication fragments, and complex algorithmic patterns. His former military colleagues watched in a mixture of awe and concern. Jack Miller, a grizzled special operations commander, leaned against the wall. "You're talking about hunting down an alien civilization that can teleport people at will," he said, more a statement than a question. Mark's fingers never stopped moving across the interfaces. "Not hunting," he corrected, strategizing. The room contained 3 other specialists Mark had personally selected. Rachel Davis, a quantum physics expert who had worked on experimental teleportation research. Tom Rodriguez, a communications specialist with experience in decrypting impossible codes. And David Kim, an expert in advanced weaponry design. "The collective," Mark explained, bringing up a holographic representation of the alien civilization, operates on a hierarchical research model. They don't see individual beings as living entities, but as potential research subjects. The hologram transformed, showing intricate networks of research stations, transit routes, and communication channels. Each node pulsed with a soft blue light, representing potential points of intervention. Rachel studied the complex diagram. "How did you get this level of detailed information?" Mark allowed himself a slight smile. "Let's just say some of my military projects weren't exactly public knowledge." Over the next 48 hours, the team worked without sleep. Custom communication jammers were designed. Adaptive camouflage suits were engineered. Weapons that could potentially disrupt alien technology were conceptualized and rapidly prototyped. "We're not just preparing for a rescue," Mark explained to his team. "We're preparing to send a message. A message that humans are not research specimens. We are not passive subjects." Tom worked on communication decryption, trying to understand the alien transmission protocols. "Their language is fascinating," he muttered. "It's not just verbal or written. It's a complex quantum communication method that integrates multiple dimensional frequencies." David focused on weaponry. He had designed a series of pulse generators that could potentially disrupt the aliens' teleportation technology. Small devices, no larger than a smartphone, but capable of generating localized electromagnetic fields that could interfere with advanced alien systems. Mark's personal preparation was equally intense. He underwent a rigorous physical and mental training regime, simulated combat scenarios against holographic alien opponents, psychological preparation to maintain focus under extreme stress. His military background gave him an edge. Years of special forces training, combined with his engineering expertise, made him uniquely qualified for this unprecedented mission. "We have a 3-day window," Mark announced to his team. "Satellite and quantum communication intercepts suggest the collective will be moving their research subjects soon. We need to be ready." Each team member understood the stakes. This wasn't just about rescuing Elena. This was about proving humanity's capability, resilience, and unwillingness to be treated as mere research material. Rachel developed quantum tracking algorithms that could potentially trace the spatial anomalies used by the collective. Tom created communication disruptors that could blind their communication networks. David's weapons could potentially neutralize their technological advantages. And Mark was the conductor of this extraordinary orchestra of human innovation and determination. As night fell and the base hummed with quiet preparation, Mark looked at a small photograph of Elena. A promise burned in his eyes. "We're coming," he whispered. "And they have no idea what's coming." The hunt was about to begin. The research outpost looked like nothing more than a shimmer in the vast emptiness of space. From a distance, it was almost invisible, a testament to the collective's advanced camouflage technology. But Mark and his team weren't interested in what was visible. They were hunting what was hidden. Their custom-built stealth shuttle cut through the void silently, its adaptive hull blending perfectly with the surrounding space debris. Tom's communication jammers worked overtime, creating false sensor readings that would mask their approach. "Approaching primary infiltration point," Rachel whispered, her fingers dancing across the navigation interface. Her quantum tracking algorithms had pinpointed this location after weeks of meticulous analysis. Mark's eyes were laser-focused. The team had spent months preparing for this moment. Custom-designed adaptive camouflage suits would allow them to move through the alien facility undetected. Electromagnetic pulse generators hung from their belts, weapons designed to disrupt alien technology at a moment's notice. The first breach came almost too easily. A maintenance airlock that Tom had identified as having minimal security protocols. David's custom-designed electronic skeleton key interfaced with the alien technology, creating a momentary vulnerability. "We're in," Mark announced, his voice calm and controlled. The interior of the research station was unlike anything they had imagined. Organic-looking corridors that seemed to pulse with an internal light. Surfaces that appeared to breathe and shift. Technology so advanced it bordered on being alive. Rachel's handheld scanner worked overtime, mapping the facility's internal structure. "Multiple biological containment units detected," she reported. "At least 12 different species. Some don't even register as traditional life forms." Their first encounter with alien security came unexpectedly. A floating drone-like entity that seemed more organic than mechanical. Its sensory appendages swept the corridor, searching for any irregularities. Tom's jammer worked perfectly. The drone paused, its sensors confused by the deliberate interference. Mark moved with the precision of a special forces operator, neutralizing the drone with a targeted electromagnetic pulse. "One down," David muttered. As they moved deeper into the facility, the true horror of the collective's research became apparent. Containment units lined the walls. Beings from various species, some recognizable, many completely alien, trapped in what could only be described as living experiments. "This isn't research," Mark said, his voice tight with controlled fury. "This is torture." Rachel's scanner suddenly went wild. A familiar energy signature caught her attention. "Mark," she whispered, "I'm detecting a human biosignature. It might be Elena." The team's focus sharpened. Every movement became more calculated. Every decision more critical. They encountered more resistance. Alien security forces that defied conventional understanding of combat. Creatures that could shift their molecular structure. Weapons that seemed to bend reality itself. But human training, human determination, and their carefully prepared technology proved to be a match. David's pulse generators created localized disruption fields. Tom's communication scramblers kept the facility's alarm systems in chaos. Rachel's quantum tracking prevented them from being cornered. And Mark was a weapon unto himself. Years of military training combined with an engineer's problem-solving mind made him unpredictable, dangerous. As they approached a central research chamber, the true scale of their mission became clear. This wasn't just about rescuing Elena. This was about sending a message to an entire civilization. Humans were not specimens, not research subjects. They were a force to be reckoned with. The final corridor approached. Somewhere beyond these alien walls, Elena waited, and the collective was about to learn a lesson they would never forget. The hunt was no longer just a mission. It had become a reckoning. The central research chamber was a nightmare of biological engineering. Pulsing organic walls seemed to breathe, shifting in colors that hurt the human eye. Containment units lined every surface, each holding what the collective considered research specimens, living beings reduced to nothing more than experimental subjects. Mark's team moved with surgical precision. David's pulse generators created localized electromagnetic disruptions, turning the facility's advanced technology against itself. Alien security systems flickered and died, their complex networks collapsing under carefully designed human interference. "We've got approximately 17 minutes before the facility's backup systems activate," Rachel reported, her quantum scanner working overtime. "After that, we'll have a full-scale security response." Tom was already working, his fingers flying across a modified alien interface. Communication networks are compromised. They won't be calling for help anytime soon. Mark's focus was singular. Each containment unit was a potential location for Elena. Years of military training and engineering expertise had prepared him for this moment. Every movement calculated, every decision precise. The first major obstacle came in the form of a biomechanical guardian. Standing nearly 3 meters tall, The creature was a horrifying blend of organic matter and technological augmentation. Its multiple sensory appendages swept the chamber, searching for intruders. David didn't hesitate. A precisely targeted pulse from his custom weapon struck the Guardian. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the creature began to convulse, its technological components failing catastrophically. These beings thought technology made them invincible, David muttered. They never understood adaptability. Rachel's scanner suddenly pinged. A unique energy signature, human, but altered. "Mark," she called out. "I got something." In the far corner of the massive chamber, a specialized containment unit stood apart from the others. Its design was different, more advanced, more secure. Mark's heart raced as he approached. The unit's exterior was a complex matrix of energy fields and quantum lock barriers. Ordinary technology would have been useless. But Mark was no ordinary operator. "Tom," he called, "I need a quantum frequency disruptor." Tom tossed a device no larger than a smartphone. Mark's fingers moved with practiced efficiency, breaking down the complex security layers one by one. Minutes felt like hours. The facility around them continued to pulse and shift, alien technology fighting against human intervention. As the final security barrier collapsed, Mark saw her. Elena, but not as he remembered her. Her body showed signs of extensive biological modification. Quantum-embedded research nodes were visible beneath her skin. Her eyes, when they opened, held a clarity that suggested she was far from a passive victim. "Hello, Mark," she said, her voice calm and controlled. In that moment, Mark realized the collective had made a fundamental mistake. They had taken Elena, thinking her a simple research subject. But she was a military intelligence operative. She had been gathering her own intelligence from the moment of her capture. The rescue was about to become something entirely different. Alarms began to sound. The facility's secondary security systems were coming online. Rachel's quantum jammers were reaching their operational limit. "We need to move," Tom shouted. Mark's hand reached out, touching the containment unit's release mechanism. Elena stepped forward, moving with a grace that suggested she was more prepared than any of them had anticipated. "They thought they could study us," she said, a dangerous smile crossing her face. They were wrong. The hunt was about to become a war. The moment of confrontation arrived with a sudden, terrifying clarity. Elena stood beside Mark, no longer a captive but a weapon unto herself. The collective's research had transformed her, but not in the way they had intended. The facility's central command chamber materialized around them, a vast, organic space that seemed to pulse with alien intelligence. Holographic representations of the collective's leadership surrounded them, each entity a bizarre amalgamation of biological and technological components. "Humans are not permitted to interfere," the primary leadership entity announced. Its voice was a discordant blend of frequencies that seemed to bypass normal audio perception. Mark stepped forward, Rachel and Tom flanking him, David positioning himself strategically near the room's critical technological junctions. Elena remained calm, her eyes scanning the environment with a predator's precision. "Interference." Mark's voice cut through the alien communication. "You mean holding sentient beings as research specimens?" The collective's leadership hesitated. This was unexpected. Most species they encountered would have been paralyzed by fear, overwhelmed by their technological superiority. Elena's modifications became apparent. Quantum nodes beneath her skin began to pulse, interfacing with the room's technological infrastructure. Years of military intelligence training combined with the collective's own research now turned against them. "Your research protocol is fundamentally flawed," she stated, her voice clinical and precise. "You view biological entities as data points, not as adaptive systems." Tom's communication disruptors began their work. Subtle waves of electromagnetic interference started to destabilize the chamber's technological defenses. David's pulse generators created localized disruption fields that made the alien technology stutter and fail. Rachel's quantum scanner mapped the entire chamber, identifying critical technological nexus points. Each scan revealed more about the collective's fundamental weakness, a reliance on rigid technological systems that lacked true adaptive capability. The confrontation was no longer just a rescue mission. It had become a demonstration of human potential. "We have studied your species for generations," the primary leadership entity proclaimed. "Your technological capabilities are primitive. Your biological structures are inefficient." Mark allowed himself a slight smile. "Inefficient? We call it adaptability." With a series of precise movements, the team began their strategic dismantling of the collective's command structure. Alina's modified biological systems interfaced with their technology, creating cascading failures in their communication and defense networks. Tom's jamming devices created quantum-level interference that confused the aliens' sensory systems. David's pulse generators targeted critical technological junctions. Rachel's scanners provided real-time strategic information. And Mark was the conductor of this unprecedented symphony of human capability. The collective began to realize their fundamental miscalculation. Humans were not just another species to be studied. They were a force of adaptation, of strategic thinking that defied conventional understanding. "Your research ends here," Mark declared. Alina's quantum-enhanced systems began to upload a virus, not a technological construct, but a complex informational breakdown of the collective's entire research methodology. It wasn't just an attack. It was a complete deconstruction of their fundamental approach to understanding biological systems. The chamber began to destabilize. Holographic representations flickered and died. The organic technological infrastructure started to collapse. "This is a message," Alina spoke, her voice carrying through the failing systems. "Humanity is not a research subject. We are researchers. We are warriors. We are survivors." As the collective's command center began to disintegrate, Mark looked at his team. They had done more than rescue Alina. They had challenged an entire civilization's understanding of what it meant to be sentient. The hunt was becoming a revolution. The assault on the collective's primary research complex was nothing short of a technological symphony of destruction. What began as a rescue mission had transformed into a full-scale strategic intervention that would reshape interstellar dynamics. Mark's team moved with surgical precision, backed by a specially assembled strike force of the most advanced human military technology. Stealth shuttles equipped with quantum disruption technology carved through the collective's defensive perimeters like they were made of paper. "Primary research network identified," Rachel called out, her quantum scanner painting a holographic map of the massive orbital complex. Multiple research stations, estimated containment of over 300 different species. The complex was a marvel of alien engineering, a massive spherical structure that seemed to defy conventional physics. Its outer shell could adapt and change, molecular structures shifting to counter any incoming threat. But the humans had something the collective never anticipated: pure, unadulterated human determination. David's weapon systems were unlike anything in human or alien arsenals. Pulse generators that could disrupt quantum communication networks, electromagnetic weapons that could collapse entire technological infrastructures. Each device was a testament to human engineering creativity. Tom worked on communication systems, creating quantum-level interference that would blind the collective's defensive networks. Entire communication channels collapsed, leaving the massive research complex deaf and blind. Alina, transformed by the collective's own research, became the ultimate weapon. Her modified biological systems could interface directly with alien technology, creating cascading failures in their most critical systems. The first wave of assault came from unexpected directions. Stealth shuttles emerged from quantum-masked positions, their weapons systems cutting through the complex's outer defenses. But this was more than a military strike. It was a surgical dismantling of an entire research methodology. "Target their primary research archives," Mark commanded. His voice was calm, calculated. Years of military training had prepared him for this moment. Each strike was precise, each movement strategic. The humans weren't just attacking. They were sending a message. Massive research stations began to collapse. Containment units failed. Species that had been imprisoned for generations suddenly found themselves free. The collective's fundamental approach to research, treating sentient beings as mere data points, was being systematically destroyed. Alina's quantum-enhanced systems uploaded a complex informational virus. It wasn't just a technological attack. It was a complete deconstruction of the collective's research protocols. Every database, every research archive began to unravel. "They thought we were specimens," Alina said, her voice carrying a cold fury. "Now they'll learn what it means to be studied." The assault continued. Wave after wave of human technology tore through the complex. Quantum disruptors, electromagnetic pulse generators, communication jammers that created entire zones of technological blindness. Mark watched as entire research stations collapsed. Containment units failed. Generations of imprisoned species found themselves suddenly free. The collective's leadership watched in horror. Their most advanced research complex, the centerpiece of their galactic research network, was being systematically dismantled by a species they had considered primitive. "Humanity is not a subject." Mark's voice echoed through the failing communication networks. "We are researchers. We are warriors. We are survivors." As the final research stations collapsed, something extraordinary happened. The freed species, from a dozen different star systems, began to rally around the human assault team. What had started as a rescue mission had become a liberation. The complex burned. Technological systems collapsed. Research archives were destroyed. The message was clear. Humanity would not be studied. Humanity would not be controlled. The turning point had arrived. The aftermath of the assault reverberated across multiple star systems. What had begun as a personal rescue mission had transformed into a watershed moment for galactic civilization. The collective's central governance met in an emergency session, their once pristine communication chambers now fractured and dim. Representatives from various sectors watched in stunned silence as the extent of their defeat was laid bare. "Humans are not to be categorized," Alina stated during the mandatory interstellar hearing. Her quantum-enhanced presence filled the massive chamber. "We are not research subjects. We are a civilization of adapters, warriors, and survivors." Mark stood beside her, representing humanity's interests. Their team, Rachel, Tom, and David, sat in strategic positions, each a living testament to human capability and resilience. The data was irrefutable. The collective had imprisoned over 317 different species across their research networks. Generations of beings had been reduced to experimental subjects, their fundamental rights stripped away. The human intervention had not just been a rescue mission. It was a complete systemic dismantling of an oppressive research infrastructure. Diplomatic channels across the galaxy lit up. Species that had been silently suffering under the collective's research protocols now found their voices. The humans had shown them that resistance was possible. "We demand complete dismantling of all research facilities," Mark declared. His voice carried the weight of military precision and moral authority. "Any civilization that treats sentient beings as mere data points will be held accountable." The freed species began to organize. What the collective had considered isolated research subjects now formed a complex network of shared experiences and mutual support. Humanity had inadvertently created a new galactic coalition. Alina's transformed biological systems became a subject of intense scientific interest. The collective's own research had created a weapon they couldn't comprehend. Her quantum-enhanced capabilities demonstrated a level of adaptability that challenged everything they understood about biological systems. Rachel's quantum research teams began documenting the entire intervention. Each technological breakthrough, each strategic decision became a case study in adaptive warfare and diplomatic intervention. Tom's communication analysis revealed the true extent of the collective's systematic oppression. Classified archives showed generations of research that treated sentient beings as nothing more than experimental subjects. David's weapon systems were now being studied by multiple species, The pulse generators and communication disruptors represented a new paradigm of technological warfare, precise, adaptable, and fundamentally ethical. The collective's leadership faced unprecedented sanctions. Their research protocols were to be completely dismantled. Independent oversight committees would be established, with representation from the liberated species. We underestimated humanity, the primary leadership entity admitted during the final hearing. The statement was both an acknowledgement of defeat and a recognition of a new galactic reality. Mark and Elena's personal story became a symbol, a narrative of love, determination, and the fundamental right of sentient beings to be treated with dignity. Their rescue mission had become a galactic revolution. In the months that followed, new diplomatic frameworks emerged. The concept of research ethics was redefined. Species across multiple star systems began to recognize their interconnectedness. Humanity was no longer seen as a young, primitive civilization. They were recognized as a strategic, adaptable force that could challenge established galactic powers. As they stood together, overlooking the Earth from a diplomatic space station, Mark looked at Elena. Their journey had changed everything. "We're not done," Elena said, her quantum-enhanced eyes scanning the infinite expanse of space. Mark smiled. "We're just getting started." The hunt was over. The real work was beginning.